if you're asking the right questions, you can get a lot of information. Like a handful of the right questions is going to give you much better context and much better information than a whole bunch of the wrong questions.
Ultimately, that could be, few smart questions answered, with enough information. Right? That's all you need. I personally believe that AI is not still at that level to become an agent, but can become a great copilot.
Because it's this blend, right? Like it's not AI making decisions for you.
Hey everyone. So we have Edward again today, right? Last time we had amazing conversation about structured interview based practices for startup. Finding that founding engineer and what goes behind that, the founder's mentality and what it should be. We also covered hiring from India across the globe, good, bad, and ugly part of it, right? But we couldn't reach to one topic which is very close to Edward and also our set Uplers, that is AI in hiring. So that's what we are going to cover today. To again rehash, Edward has probably more than 2 decades of experience leading engineering teams, and then he started a company called Gordian Knot with a much needed mission to help organizations create strong, diverse, and inclusive engineering team. And while we are also building our team at Uplers, we are helping a lot of global companies build their team in India. I think there is a real need in the market for someone to come guide, coach, and mentor, especially early stage companies when they are making those crucial decisions, because at early stage each hire is critical, right? It can make or break companies. So I think we had amazing discussions on that last time, Edward. Welcome back again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure to chat with you last time, and
Yep.
I'm looking forward to our talk today.
Oh yes, yes, and especially you have been a voice when it comes to AI in hiring, right? You were at Google Developer Conference in DevFest, right? Boston, if I'm not wrong. And
Yeah, that's
that
correct.
November, right? Probably 1.5 months ago. And
Yep.
I'm sure I'm here to learn a lot from you about your perspective, because when it comes to AI, we all have our own perspective, right? Some of us have gone deeper into understanding and validating those assumptions and perspective, but I think it's a very interesting world where a lot of founders, companies, players are, you know, trying to leverage this technology, and still we all are figuring out, hey, what is working, what is not, what would work in future. So excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This is definitely a topic that's near and dear to me. Like you
Mhm,
said, I did give a talk on this at Google DevFest back in November.
mhm,
Was well received. I think that there's been a lot of advancement of
mhm,
AI into the hiring space
mhm,
without a whole lot of thought about whether or not it makes sense for
mhm,
people. Um,
mhm,
some people have been doing it really well, and other folks, I think, have kind of grasped onto a little bit of maybe pseudoscience,
mhm, mhm,
and are hoping that AI can help them suss out like some of the things that maybe it can't really help them do.
mhm,
But
mhm.
yeah, looking forward to this talk.
And this is a very sensitive area, right? Because here the decision is on career of people.
Right.
Decision is on companies hiring right people. So this is not a matter of you making a wrong purchase because AI suggested something and that product you may not need. This is all about deciding on people's career. So a very sensitive area for sure. But what are your overall thoughts on where does AI stand today at a broader context when it comes to hiring?
Yeah. So in a broader context, I think most of the AI that's out there is a little dodgy. Uh,
Mhm,
like there's, um, There's some really good companies like that. I think we talked about last time, but most of the companies are sort of relying on science that's not really proven yet
Mhm,
in order to make these decisions.
mhm,
You know, some companies have done a good job, like really delving into how to assess things like personality using AI.
mhm,
And there is a little bit of a connection between personality and your ability to do a job well.
mhm,
But connecting those two things up and using AI to do it is something, it's a brand new variable in the equation.
mhm,
And that's something that hasn't really been studied all that well.
mhm,
Like, does this application of AI actually lead to better hires? And frankly, like we just don't know. Like we're at the forefront of doing this, and yeah, even though there are some companies out there, that have been sort of they have gamified AI assessments
mhm,
that have been around for about 10 years now.
mhm,
Like there's still like the consensus opinion is that we still don't know enough
mhm,
that to say like this is going to be a great way to do this.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
yeah,
Not true. So I think we have also been working and trying to implement AI since probably more than 4 quarters now, right? And have our own learnings. Uh, Before that, let's because hiring is a very complex process, right? Because ultimately there are two people. One is the manager who want to hire. One is candidate who want to join, and then there is an entire cloud full of communication gap, information mismatch, bias,
right.
and that cloud is still there with human. It is not that humans don't have bias. When a recruiter recruits, he or she also recruits based on limited information available, based
Mhm.
on the limited knowledge they have about the role, about the market, about the candidate, not able to understand technicality, especially for niche technical roles. So what I observed that it's not that when humans are involved, there is no bias. There is you
Yeah,
know enough and equal bias into that system, and AI has its own, because AI typically learns based on the data available, right? And it all depends what input is given. Uh, that's what the output comes. Plus, how do you train the algorithm? If it is garbage in, it is going to be garbage out, right?
right.
Uh, if we try to break, this hiring process, which is complex, right, into few bits and pieces and buckets, because
Mhm.
that's what we do at Uplers. It's difficult to eat this entire elephant at a time. Let's eat one piece at at a time, right?
Yeah,
So typically we divide is, probably uh, those initial phase, which is all about research on getting clarity, market mapping, understanding what kind of candidates you need in the market, what kind of candidates are available. Then it is about creating job description, publishing, the jobs, if you are doing that. So that is the job prep part. Then comes the sourcing piece, right? Where you attract a lot of candidates. You know, there are companies who do marketing, employee branding. We also touched last time, but that also plays some role into attracting candidates. Third is all about curation, right? You received, say, if it is a you posted a job in US, possibly you may receive 200, 300 application. If it is India, that can go
Mhm.
to 5,000 applications, right? So you
Yeah,
you receive tons of application, and then the job is to curate and surface those top 20, 30, 50 talents which possibly are matching your needs. And
right.
then comes interview, evaluation, selection, onboarding, hiring. And hiring is just a milestone, right?
Yeah,
Ultimately, it's all about successful hire, which you get to know after 3 months, 6 months down the line. So
correct.
it's a complex phenomenon, right? Where there are so many humans involved into the entire process. Which of these kind of stages have you seen that, hey, AI is adding some impact in some way or another? And also we can cover which areas where AI is still not there, but the industry is kind of using it, which would not be. Why?
There are there's two areas where AI is really adding a lot of value, and there's two areas where things are getting used quite frequently, probably more frequently than anything else.
Hmm.
But the value added is a little bit unknown, right? There's certainly there's a bit of a black box aspect to it, but so I guess let's start with that. Let's start with the bad news first, right?
Okay. Yep.
Um, so there's two ways in which people are trying to use AI that aren't really working out that well. One is resume evaluation,
Mm.
um, and and the other is actual candidate evaluation. So whenever AI is getting involved, trying to make a decision about a candidate, there's some serious concerns that really haven't been well addressed. One of these is resume evaluation. Like with and it's trying to solve a real problem. You have 5,000 resumes. How are you going to sort through all of those 5,000 resumes? Using AI to try to make sense out of all of those, to have the better ones float to the top, seems to make a lot of sense, like on the face of it. But what most of the AI tools are doing is still sort of scanning for keywords.
Mm.
Right? So so underneath the hood, right? Like they're using they're using large language models. So they're finding keywords like in context
Yeah.
now. So, like if you're talking about coding, it's not looking at like a medical coder and saying, "Oh, this is great," or somebody who's in cryptography, right? Like it knows like what coder means like in this context. So things have gotten better, but it's still just keywords, right?
Mm.
And the big problem with that is it's kind of an arms race, right? Because you have all of these candidates on the other side of the fence who are also using AI, right, to game the system, right? So it's kind of a wash, right? Like you have AI generated resumes versus AI generated resume checkers,
Mm.
uh, and so you're not really getting the signal that you want to get, because people are gaming the system, and because ultimately you're looking at keywords, and when you are looking at those keywords, you're not getting what really matters out of a resume. Like there are lots of signals that people look for. What school somebody went to, right, for example, is a great one. Somebody went to MIT, and you think, I want to hire that person. But that doesn't necessarily make sense for you, right? Like an MIT graduate, a Stanford graduate, it's going to be great, but they're going to be expensive, right? They may not be the best fit for you and your organization, but people can get really anchored on that idea. Like, here's this guy, he went to Stanford, he applied, right? I want to hire this person. Um, and so when you have an AI powered resume checker, it's not filtering out any of that stuff, right? You're still getting hooked on some of these things that are going to bias you towards a specific candidate. Um, so they're fine, like in that like they can be used like to augment human decision making, but they're really not there in terms of being able to decide who are the best candidates out of a given cohort.
Mm.
Most of the recruiters that I work with, that I talk to online, have access to these tools. Many of them just don't use them. They find that they don't trust the tools. They don't like how candidates get ranked, or like what these tools call out as important.
Mm.
There's more of a human story that recruiters see when they're actually reading this resume,
Mm.
trying to understand why, for example, somebody has a gap in their employment.
Mm.
Like if there's, say, a 1 year gap, um, like, why did that happen? For a human, like that's just a question you ask, right? There may be very good reasons for that.
Mm.
For an AI, it has to make a decision based on the evidence that it has, right? So if there's a 1 year gap, you think gaps are bad, that person doesn't float to the surface. So there's a lot more nuance to it than LLMs are able to really deliver at this point in time.
Mm. We have worked on it extensively, right?
Mhm.
We Okay, so I think my learning here is that let's how a recruiter shortlist the CV. If I talk about Indian scenario, right, where there are say 2,000 applicants. Now, practically, it is not possible for a recruiter to go through all those 2,000 applicants, right?
Right.
So the first thing they do is they put across all the filters and booleans based on their fitment criteria. And I think those things are critical. And with some support of LLMs, there are few intelligence we are able to bring into the system, especially from filter side,
Mhm.
where the similar learning, right? Where what recruiter would look at, the basic criteria, number of years, location, salary, notice period, if they are, they're looking for someone who can join faster,
Mhm.
stability of the candidate can be done through criteria, uh, institutes, whether the person has come from premium institute or not, or it has reached up to that level if you are looking for someone from say product company, B2B, fintech.
Right.
That level of taxonomy can really help. There is nothing much AI into this, but that's what typically without this intelligence, that's how the recruiters have been kind of shortlisting, uh, you know, top 50, 60 people where they can start from 2000 and plus skill set, right? The booleans. And we struggled, frankly speaking. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
so that's what we learned, right? Initially, we assume that if we feed all this information to AI algorithm, it would do its own magic, right?
Yeah.
And then we were kind of feeding job description to AI. We also realized that beyond this, that job description is a very important document,
Yeah.
because ultimately the technology would understand the input we give, uh, and we failed terribly there, frankly speaking, right? Because when the job description is not right, still recruiter have all those bells and whistles and weapons to kind of shortlist talent. But when we initially started kind of creating a relevancy algorithm and listing of candidates based on job description, I think we
Mhm.
failed miserably, because as you rightly said, the job description is one side, the resume is on other side, and both these documents are not reliable today. Right, so we spent the initial 6 months to figure out that we were training our algorithm, but it was not giving enough results.
Yeah.
Uh, and then in last 3 months, I think we tried to again look at the core that hey, let's give lesser inputs to AI and understand that beyond keyword match, which is either vector search or any other LLM or algorithm you keyword based algorithm you take,
Mhm.
what level of context it is able to understand. Uh, and that's where I think our hopes started going again a little up, right? Where uh, this technology has that contextual understanding. If for example, I'm hiring someone from a digital agency, if I give
Mhm.
that context that hey, I want to prioritize people who have worked in a digital agency, I think it is bringing better result out of it because it has some context of many of the companies from previous data of hey, whether it is a digital agency or not, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so I think we started seeing some success into that. Still working on that. We are one of those companies where possibly it hasn't reached up to that level in terms of shortlisting, curating candidates. But constantly we are also kind of status quoing that what is other better way to help recruiters beyond those either filters or booleans, which are anyhow
Right.
either taxonomy or a keyword search only. Then
Yeah.
what additional few things which we can help, through which they can at least get better context out of the search. But as you rightly said, we are still far, right? A lot of iterations are going on. Uh, it is also very difficult because each talent is different. Each recruiters or hiring managers need is different, and then
Right.
there are a lot of assumptions comes into picture that hey, why this talent was selected, and there could be five different reasons in the CV, which is
Yeah.
difficult for system to understand, right? So I think it's a very interesting cycle. We ourselves are going through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is really interesting because I think um, maybe the weakest part of the whole hiring pipeline is resume. and the job description. Um, right? There's these two really imperfect documents that we keep short, right? Like all the guidance tells you keep these things as short as you possibly can, but this is the majority of the information that people are making their decision on, right? You're deciding to apply for a job, right? You want to read a job description. You want to be able to see yourself in that job, understand what it's going to require, and figure out whether or not you're going to be good in that job, right? You've got a couple of paragraphs to do that. Same thing on the other side, right? You send in a resume. Everybody tells you keep your resume to one page, right? And so people are trying to jam information into this one page um, about sometimes an entire lifetime of experiences. And so, trying to make decisions based on this is really, really hard. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know that we're going to change that aspect of hiring anytime soon, but
No.
there's just
Yeah.
so little data to go on for both parties.
What we are learning when we speak with hiring managers and recruiters to kind of validate job description. So
Mhm.
typically, job description is your wish list, right? You try to cover as broader aspect as possible into them because typically at
Right.
that point of time you want to hire an ideal candidate. But
Yep.
then those individuals have understanding that hey, ultimately what I need is this two core skill sets, this two behavior, probably this background, and I'm good. Mostly I'm going to select this kind of candidate. But that typically doesn't reflect in job description. So
Right.
even we are at Uplers, we are kind of you know status quoing that does job description really required to make hiring? Can't ultimately that could be few smart questions answered you know with enough information, right? That's all you need, and probably isn't it?
Yeah, I think that there's lots of room for improvement. There's lots of rooms to do this differently, and I think with where AIs are going, I think that could be a really interesting avenue to pursue in the next few years.
Yeah.
Um, because if you're asking the right questions, you can get a lot of information.
Mm.
Um, like a handful of the right questions is going to give you much better context and much better information than a whole bunch of the wrong questions.
Wrong question.
And like a lot of what I see now, like with the resume scanners that are out there, is they're asking a lot of the wrong questions,
Yeah.
right? So they're getting this data, they're making decisions, but they're just not making it in a way that's really helpful to the candidate. The same thing with creating job descriptions, right? Like you're asking most of the time you go through and there's one sentence that says should be a good communicator, right? Like we include that in every job description just because, right? But the rest is just a list of the hard skills, right? Like you need to know Python and PyTorch and pandas and right. So we're going to list out all of like the machine learning tools we could possibly think of. Right. Like your model has to hit the leaderboard on Hugging Face, right? Um, and um, like and we think like that these signals like are like we think we're going to find somebody who somehow magically matches all of these things.
Mm.
But rarely, if ever, is that the case.
True, true.
And a lot of times we're not asking for the things that are really going to make that person successful in a role. Like
Mm.
we're asking for the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Like you need to know these technologies. If you don't know these technologies, like you can't come work here. And like if you don't know Python, you can't be a Python developer, right? Like there's just like hands down, that's not going to happen. But are you going to be good at this job that we have for you? That is just infinitely more complex than what we can describe in this document. That we don't know, right? Like that's really the hard part. So when you're and so when you're trying to train a model, right, you're using this job description, right, to sort of say, will this person be good in the job? It's hard because the model is saying, well, if this is what the person has to do, if like they need to know Python, they need to know PyTorch, right, they need to be on the leaderboard of Hugging Face, then yes, right, this person is going to be a good match because they have listed all these things on their resume. But what about all the other things that go into making a good hire, right? Like all of the sort of human parts that go into making a good hire,
Mm.
like the ability to communicate, the ability to think creatively, uh, the ability to to work with a team to solve problems, right? The humility that some people need, right, in order to really react well with other people, to interact well with other people, like
Mm.
that doesn't come out in any of this, right? So that's why I say, like, job descriptions and resumes are really just really imperfect documents.
True. Yeah.
You're scanning for hard skills, and that's about it. But you don't know yet, is this person going to be good in the role?
True.
Um,
True.
yeah,
Yep. No, great. So that is first, right? First bad news that there are many companies, including us, we are trying hard to solve that resume
yeah.
validation problem, leveraging AI. I think everyone is seeing some light at the end of the tunnel that how it can be used, but we all are figuring out. Hey, and it's not only about it's not a simple problem, right? Because there are humans involved across the boards, but it's an area where if not today, uh, you know a year 2 years down the line, some technology need to solve this problem, and that's the chase.
I was just saying, when it comes to complexity, somebody was asking me the other day, like why I wanted to go from engineering into engineering management. Um, and they're like, were you tired of how hard engineering was, and you wanted to do something easier? And I was like, I went from a job where I had clear inputs and outputs. Right? Somebody would tell me, here's a widget that needs to do this thing, and I would write code and I would make it do that thing, and then I would go home. Right? My day was done. Um, to it, and I left that job to go to a job that has an infinite continuum of inputs and outputs in a non-deterministic system. Um, so I went from something that is clear and direct to something that not even a quantum computer could solve.
True.
And right, and that's really like what we're trying to do, right? Like is we're trying to apply all of our logic and all of our engineering to solving this problem, but it's a much much bigger problem than we think. I think we are getting there, like you were saying, right? Like there are revolutions happening in AI. So what's going to happen even in the next 12 months? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Right, I'm really excited to see like what's coming out. Some of the new models that have dropped, the new O1 model is really amazing in some of the things that it can do. But I do still think that there is this human element to things, right?
Yeah.
Where we're better at taking a lot of imperfect information and making better decisions based on that imperfect information than computers have been.
Yep. 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 True. 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 Let's jump to the second bad news, right? Which is candidate evaluation. I think it is beyond now resume or CV, right?
Yeah.
Where companies are using AI to kind of evaluate candidates.
Yeah. So there are some folks that do this better than others. Like there's a few companies that kind of scare me with what it is they're trying to do. And here's where sort of the pseudoscience of AI comes in, right? Like so there are companies out there that have found some research that your facial structure can help predict some personality traits. Um, right.
Interesting.
So the science isn't especially strong. Like there is some correlation between these things, but but overall, there's not a ton of science that says if you have a bone structure like mine, that means you're going to be outgoing, right? Um, it's correlated, right, to a certain extent, but weakly correlated, and so you can't really rely on this information. But what one company is trying to do is to say, I'm going to help you make a decision on who to hire by just looking at their social media profile photo. So whatever you've picked, whatever you've put on LinkedIn, for example, we're going to scan this. We're going to look at your facial structure. From that facial structure, we're going to extrapolate what your personality traits are. And from those personality traits, we're going to extrapolate whether or not you'd be good in this job. Um, that
Interesting.
to me is it's a fascinating idea, right? Without a doubt.
Yeah.
But there's so many things about it that scare me. Right? One, um, I was born with this bone structure, right? Like this bone structure is what I've had, like pretty much my whole life. Changes a little bit. I'm getting older. My face is getting a little wider, maybe, but more or less, this is who I've been. And so, but when I think about who I was as a person when I was 18 years old, as opposed to now at 50 years old, I am a dramatically different person.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think anybody would say you're the same person from 18 to 50.
Hmm.
So if the science is relying on your bone structure predicting whether or not you're going to be good for a job or not, like you have to overcome you know, basically, like all of this change that you could have had, right? So it's going to evaluate me as if I was an 18-year-old. Right? Like that's the level of complexity it's going to be able to figure out. Right? It's not going to be able to figure out what have you gone through in your life, right? Like what problems have you had? How have you solved those problems? And how have you grown as an individual?
Hmm.
All of that gets hidden by you just looking at this one thing. Not only that, it's something you can't change, right? Like
Yeah.
you're born a certain way, right? And so you're really just saying now, if you're born looking this way, you don't get these jobs, right?
Hmm.
That to me is sort of this scary dystopian future of AI, where because you were born looking a certain way, you don't get access to the upper echelons of society, right? Like that to me is terrifying. As an American who believes in freedom and equality, and the chance to do, like whatever it is you set your mind to,
Hmm.
the notion that there would be some system in place that would keep you from doing that based solely on how you look, I find terrifying. But there are companies out there trying to do this.
Fascinating yet scary idea, right? Because I
Yeah,
think that gauging success of a candidate is very complex phenomenon, right? One you mentioned, but then second, equally important, what's the environment you are providing to the candidate, right? So
right.
a lot of aspects. Sometimes a really skillful, able candidate suffers in a wrong environment, and
Right.
sometimes vice versa. So very interesting. Oh, glad to see people have started thinking up to that level.
Right.
But it is scary for sure. Where have you seen some success when it comes to candidate evaluation, right? So there are many tools available. Coding interviews, AI interviews,
Mhm.
uh, and a lot of development is happening into that area.
Yeah.
Have you seen anyone at least moving in the right direction of success? Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. So some good friends of mine had a company called We Create Problems. I think we chatted about them
We talked
before.
about
So
it.
like they're doing a really great job
Mhm,
when it comes to candidate evaluation. I
mhm,
think they're one of the few companies I can think of off the top of my head that's
mhm,
really doing interesting things with AI when
mhm,
it comes to candidate evaluation. Um,
mhm,
Almost everything else in that market is really based on personality traits.
mhm,
But WeCP is really looking at like how to assess hard skills in a way that's a lot more representative of what those of how those skills will actually be used.
mhm,
So when you think about like the sort of traditional coding interviews, like we have, there's the sort of leak code style hacker rank tests, and those are great for especially for recent grads. Right, if you want to hire a recent grad, using one of those tests is going to tell you did they pay attention in school, like you know, uh, do they get good grades, right? Are they going to understand the fundamentals? Going beyond that, right? Like when you go to hire a senior engineer, asking them just about the fundamentals isn't really getting at the heart of what it is you need a senior engineer to do. Um, right? Like senior engineers are much bigger, problem solvers. They're spending less time coding and more time mentoring. Right? They're thinking about bigger issues like, how do I structure this code? How do I design these systems? Like as opposed to, can I invert a binary tree? Um, at this point in their career, they they've inverted binary trees for school like I don't know how many times. They've inverted binary trees for work probably zero times.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not going to be good at these tests
Hmm.
because they will have forgotten much of this stuff.
Hmm.
Um, is this a sliding window algorithm? I don't know. Maybe it is, but those problems come up in engineering. In and I say in engineering, I say in this is really most of the work that I've done, that my peers have done. These problems don't come up.
Hmm.
If you are building, a music compressor, right, a different story, right? Like you need to build, like audio compression. You're going to get deeper into some of these concepts than, say, me. Like I'm sort of, I call myself an internet plumber, right? Um, like I've got a system here, a system there. I got to run the pipes from system A to system B to make sure all data gets from one point to another, right? Um, so for me, for most of the people I hire, like knowing those fundamentals hasn't really been that big of an issue.
Hmm.
That's why I like WeCP
Okay.
because they're looking at um, what actually matters in terms of skill sets,
Hmm.
as opposed to just here's this list of different algorithms, and you need to know these algorithms.
Hmm.
It's real practical problems.
Hmm.
Um, they'll be able to generate a React problem for you. They'll say, like here's a prompt, right? Build me a React front end, fetch data from this API, filter it in this way, display this widget on the screen.
Hmm.
Um, that's what a React developer is going to do, right? A React developer isn't going to invert a binary tree on a daily basis.
Hmm.
Um, they don't need to implement a breadth first search. It's just not something that they're going to do. So WeCP gives you the ability to generate problems in a really simple way, and it also uses like, this is something that they just dropped recently as sort of AI test proctoring.
Hmm.
Um, so one of the biggest concerns that people have when you're letting people, like when you're administering these tests to people, is are they just going to cheat?
Hmm.
Are they going to have somebody else take the test for them? So with this new tool that WeCP has, they're really looking to change the game a bit
Hmm.
because like their AI test proctoring is going to give you a lot more confidence that the person taking the test is actually the person that is going to show up like in your office to have the rest of the interview process.
Hmm.
So they're doing some really great stuff.
Interesting. Interesting. So, this is kind of a real problem, and there could be a real solution here, right? Uh, as per my understanding, the importance of assessment is to kind of identify the real skills beyond resume, because you cannot rely on resume. You need some way to kind of validate those skills, because typically what we hear from companies who hire is that, hey, what is written in resume, whenever we speak with the candidate, these two are very different things altogether, right? Very
Yeah.
difficult to gauge hard skills from resume. There are some assumptions everyone make, but ultimately there is no other way.
Yeah.
uh, Using AI in interview, we also felt that, hey, it could be a good use case, and we are still working on that. uh, Earlier, we were using a lot of HackerRank Codility, right? But the biggest problem was proctoring, as you rightly said.
Right.
That and still, that's the problem we at Uplers are facing. Tried multiple things, have involved a couple of very senior experts as consultant onto the team. The new Gemini version looks like it has a better solution to proctoring, a little bit expensive,
Mhm.
but couple of problems we faced. One is that the really good engineers, senior engineers, who are really good at what they do, they their behavior is not to spend 30 minutes, 40 minutes, giving an AI test. So we were
Right.
hiring kind of a team of senior engineers for TripAdvisor in India. And that's what we realized that, hey, when we gave our AI assessment to engineers, our algorithm was taking, say, top 50 engineers, and none of the top 20 engineers gave that assessment. Then
Yeah.
I picked up the phone and started speaking with those guys, right? That, hey, what's the problem? For them, it is more about they are already in demand, right? They are okay to spend 2 hours in a in-person coding round, but their belief system from candidate side on AI also was one of the area which we realized that, hey, okay, there is a belief system, right? Because from their perspective, now this tool is going to gauge my candidature, and I don't know, what it is going to, how it is going to evaluate, what it is going to do. So better I restrain myself from there and look for companies who are ready to spend that 1 hour to gauge my candidature, because I know I'm really good. I have worked at Uber for 2 years. I don't need to give that 30, 40 minute assessment kind of, right? So
Yeah.
that's one problem I personally encountered when I started speaking with those candidates, that, you know, senior engineers who really had caliber, have worked at good companies, could be a great fit for TripAdvisor. In this process, we started kind of eliminating them because they were not ready to give this 30, 40 minute of assessment. And who gave those assessments? Those engineers who were in really need of a job today, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the understanding was that, hey, could there be a better way to this? Because in especially in startup hiring or niche engineering hiring is not only about company assessing talent, right? Talent also has their own preference about where they want to invest time. Uh,
Without a
that
doubt.
was one problem. And the second, yeah, proctoring, right? Even what we realized that, and still for us, the proctoring hasn't reached up to that level. After multiple attempts, team is still trying. But, you know, at least in 30% cases, you would have your doubts whether, hey, was it genuine? Was there any kind of manipulation into it? And I look at WCP, right? What they are
Mhm.
doing. If their solution is good, would be happy to kind of use that, because this is a problem. If anyone solves, it would be great.
Right.
But yeah, these are the two problems we kind of encountered. Uh, and then probably the approach we have taken right now is, hey, let's not use AI to make decisions and assess or evaluate candidates.
Right.
Uh, we change our lens towards talent, right? Let's use AI to help talents kind of express their candidature in the best possible way. So go deeper into the projects you have done, go deeper into the problems you have solved, go deeper into the impact you have made. Nobody is going to assess you, based on your answers. This is what you are presenting yourself. So the
Yeah.
kind of the lens changed from evaluation to kind of getting deeper information from the talent, and then trying to see, how do we match make right talent with the right company. Still, technical assessment remains as one of the objective, which probably we stopped touching that because we realized that, possibly those in-person live coding round could be a better solution today, rather
Mhm.
than kind of using AI to assess. Now that's where we have landed today so far, Edward, right?
Yeah.
Uh, have you heard this? What's your take on candidates they embracing AI interviewer, or an
Yeah.
assessment where no humans are involved to gauge their candidature?
Right. I can tell you unequivocally that every candidate I've come across does not like AI
Yeah,
interviews.
yeah,
Yeah. Like, because interviews really are a two-way street. Right. It's the company has all the power, right? The company has the money, right? The company makes the decision, right? So it's definitely it's biased, right, towards the company, right? That's why the company asks most of the questions, but the candidate also has to be asking questions. The candidate needs to get some information out of like the company to figure out like, is this a place that I want to work? Like, and is this a place where I can work? Um, and so if you have an AI interview where you just have sort of a blank screen that you're talking at, um, they're not getting that feedback. They're not feeling like there's people here that I could see myself working with. Right? It feels very cold. It feels impersonal. Some people are going to put up with it, like you said, because they need a job. Like they're out of work, they need to get back into work, and they need to do this quickly. So sure, they'll put up with a lot of things. But are you getting the best talent that way? No, right? Because the best talent can just stay at the job that they're already at, right? Or they have their choice of 3 or 4 or 5 different companies that they could go work for. So you always need to be thinking about like your strategy when you're going to hire.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you're just sort of commodity hiring, right? There have definitely been times when um, I knew that I needed to get a lot of people on board. I needed to get them on quickly. And I didn't need them to be like, I didn't need them to get up to speed on day one, right? I had time, right? I could sit them down. I could train them. Like I could help them understand what it is they needed to understand. And so when you're doing that, when you're hiring a lot of people and you don't need them to be really perfect on day one, right? AI interviews might not be a bad way to go. Still wouldn't be my preference. I mean, I like talking to people. Obviously, I'm on a podcast. I like talking to people, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I would still want to do it sort of one to one. But I can see how, for some companies, especially at a really high volume, those things could make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally aligned, right? And similar learning from our experience and data. So our learning is that when these are senior roles, it's better not to use AI interview. If these are junior to mid-level roles, right, it is still okay to use that, and it adds value. It also shows that kind of interest and seriousness of the candidate, right, when he's spending that 20 minutes answering on the AI interview. Plus, we have also seen that especially for non-technical profile, if a company is hiring, say, customer support, if a company is hiring sales reps, SDRs, who are already extrovert, because one of the challenge with technical candidates, they typically are not very extrovert and videoverse, right? But if we talk about these profiles, whose job is to speak with people, we have
yeah,
seen better success there. Plus, when it comes to junior to mid-level role, where anyhow you are going to get tons of application, uh, and gauging their seriousness about joining your company is equally important. And this
yeah,
20-minute assessment really help you filter some
right,
of the similar, very similar learning, Edward.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to that filtering problem is real. I mean, I work with mainly software engineers, like some product folks, QA, that sort of thing. So I look at it from a slightly different lens. You know, like, but yeah, I think with those other roles you're talking about, sort of SDRs, account reps, customer support. Certainly, you need a different strategy, right? Like, um, I often tell people that if like if it was just clear like what you needed to do, if I could write down the instructions for like how to hire people, I wouldn't have a job anymore, right?
Yeah.
People wouldn't hire me like to sort of help them like navigate through all the nuances of this, right? Because it would be simple, right? I would write out a pamphlet, I would hand it to you, and we'd be done.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, like there's so many different roles.
Yeah.
There's so many different
Yeah.
strategies for hiring these roles.
Right.
Being able to sort of think through all these things, like having a trusted partner that's going to help you figure all this stuff out.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me in business.
No, true, true, true,
Yeah,
true. And the industry needs people like you, right? The complexity is beauty here.
yeah,
So yeah, great, great. So these are the two kind of bad news, right? Where
yeah,
people are working, we are working, you've seen many companies working, and we are trying
yeah.
again. Which are those couple of areas where you have really seen AI adding value in one way or another?
Yeah, I think one of the best things I've seen is AI companies who are helping people create interview guides. Right, so an interview guide, like we were discussing, like just before this started, like using structured interview processes, and like what we were talking about previously.
Mm,
Structured interviews are harder to come up with than just sitting down and having a conversation with somebody. Uh,
mm,
like getting the questions right, making sure you're asking clear questions. You're avoiding things like double-barreled questions, so you really know like what somebody's answering. There's a lot of art that goes into that.
mm,
When I work with people, like it's sometimes hard for me to come up with a good set of questions in the first go round. So
mm,
I'll iterate through it a few times.
right,
But now there's companies that are using LLMs like to generate these question sets, and they're every bit as good as the questions I come up with, if not better, in many cases. Right, as long as you're providing it with good input about what this job is, they're doing amazing work at coming up with these structured interview questions. And it's really saving people like hours and hours of work. And it's giving them a way to sort of supercharge their interview process. Uh, right.
right.
So there's a couple of companies out there. So I think Bright Hire is one of them. Um,
Yeah.
and
The higher guide we discussed, bar raiser which I discussed. So yeah.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're doing some really great work. Um, because it's this blend, right? Like it's not AI making decisions for you, right? Which I think is sort of right. Like that's the goal of many of these startups that I've seen. Like let's cut the person out of the equation altogether.
Mm,
We'll throw some input into the AI. The AI will make a decision about who's good and who's not.
right.
Um, and it's just not right. Like this, it's this infinitely complex system that we have.
True.
Uh, so anything we can do to help support the decision making of somebody else, like that's a really great application of this.
Yeah.
Um,
All,
you know,
all the co-pilots, right? I think even these are all structured interview co-pilot, which you mentioned about.
exactly.
So,
Yep.
and that's a new area for me, right? We also discussed before we started. I think structured interview is something I myself is going into. Possibly would enroll to some of these tools and would learn.
Yep.
Uh, but here the the role of AI is just to support, right?
Mhm.
Help you create questions. Probably you can pick few. Help you structure the interview. uh, record the interview, create transcript, create summary analysis, not rating, making any decisions on behalf of human, but helping hiring managers and recruiters to kind of stay on that path and help
Yep.
them make better decisions as a co-pilot. So great. So this is one good use case of AI as a co-pilot, right? uh, uh, and there are a lot of discussions in industry, right? AI agents and co-pilots. So at least I personally believe that AI is not still at that level to become an agent, but can become a great co-pilot. Do you also
Yep.
have the same kind of understanding today?
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I used
At
to.
least hiring. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to work in medical software, and so we would often be dealing with data, like about, like, say, what dosage like a patient should receive. Right. So a doctor would prescribe some medication, and like we had the ability to say that's the wrong like prescription for this patient, right? And the more we had discussions, like when I would get together with the product folks, they would start thinking like, well, like if we know this information about the patient, right? Like, can't we just say this is the right prescription, right? Like you should prescribe this medication at this dosage. And I was like, we are not doctors, right? I do not want to take the place of a doctor. I don't want to go to a doctor and have him rely on a system that I built. Right? Like I want that doctor to go to medical school, to understand all the problems, to understand the nuances, and then to get a little bit of help on the side, right, from a system that we create. Right. So supporting decisions, I think, is great. Making decisions is not so great.
Not so great yet. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. So one use case you mentioned where you have seen it really working, and there are companies who are working in that direction, is to help in structured interviews, right? Both
Mhm.
recruiters, hiring managers, both personas. What is the next use case where you have seen it really
So
work?
So many of the same companies are doing this, but it's using AI to record the interview, and this is for a few reasons. There are some folks out there that use the recording to try to get more information about the candidate. I'm not 100% convinced about that yet. Again, there's a little bit of science. There's a branch of psychology called psycholinguistics that says that they can predict different personality traits from the choices of words that somebody makes. Right, so like there's correlations between the frequency of words, how quickly you speak, and the sort of personality that you're going to have. You're going to be more extroverted or have greater integrity, like based on like some of these things. I'm not 100% sure about that. What I am sure about, though, is that recording an interview, like to have an actual transcript of what was said, is a game changer for me. Right? It was like when I was working at my last company, I was constantly taking notes. I was sitting there typing out notes, trying to make sure I was getting the most accurate notes down that I could. So when I went back to review them, it wasn't just the feeling I had in the moment; it was what was actually said. And with AI note takers actually giving you this transcript of like what was actually said, you can go back and look at that interview far more objectively. I don't know if you've tried this yet or not, but
Yep.
like to me, it really changed. It changed how I evaluated candidates altogether. Because I would go in and have a conversation with somebody, even using a structured interview process. I would talk to them, and I would just come away from that meeting with them having a really great feeling. Right? I thought, wow, this person like really answered that question well. And then, an hour or two later, or the following day when we were doing a debrief with everybody, I would read through the transcript again, and I would think, why did I feel this way about this candidate? Right? When you take like all of the charm, right, all the charisma out of somebody's answer, right, and you just have it written on a page, you can evaluate them a lot more objectively, like in a much different way. And when you do, sometimes you realize this person has no idea what they're talking about. They can tell you things in a really convincing way, and they can make you feel great about the conversation you're having, but they don't really know what they need to know in order to get the job done. Like that to me was it was kind of like this hidden superpower of AI note takers. That it's not just, oh hey, like you don't have to take notes. We have this thing here in case you need it. Like it was a really critical bit of the interview process. So to me, like that's one of the biggest things out there. And there's a ton of tools. There's Fathom and Otter. They're not specifically designed for interviewing, but there's also Hire Guide, Bright Hire offer interview things, interview recorders as well. And there's some of these systems. The thing I think is really interesting about this is using these AI note takers, AI interview recorders, to assess the performance of the interviewer, um, because that almost never happens, right? In almost every other aspect of what we do, there's some sort of feedback loop. Right? If you are a customer service rep, you're talking to a person, that person can come back, right, and talk to somebody else. How many times have you heard this call is being recorded for quality assurance purposes, right? Right, like you get some sort of like feedback loop. Never happens with interviewers.
Interviews.
Uh, and it's arguably one of the most important things we do as a company, right, is select who we are going to have join our company. And we just don't put the time and effort into it to really understand, well, how well are the people that we're trusting to do this doing it? And it's not even, it's not really a matter of trust, right? There are certainly people that I have trained like to go and interview, and I trust those people. I know that they're doing the best that they can. But what I always lacked was the ability to say to them, like, hey, you're doing great, but you could do this a little bit differently, right? They didn't ever get that sort of insight because it was just them and the other person in this room, right? And the candidate is never going to say to them, hey, I didn't like the way you asked that question. Um, so being able to get this objective sort of third party like review of how you're doing and being able to use that to improve, I think is going to change the game.
Yep. So, and there are many use cases of this, right? I think we also discussed briefly about that. I also started exploring few tools. I haven't gone very deep into that. It is still in my radar. It's somewhere in our product roadmap, and we are seeing a little different use case of it.
Okay.
For us, the use case of kind of transcript or recorded interview is more about, because as a platform, there are multiple personas, right? So for example, recruiter takes the first call, then the recruiter makes a decision whether to move this talent ahead or push him back. And there are some interesting conversations which typically happens at that stage, and not enough information reaches to the hiring manager, because it all depends on what kind of summary a recruiter would put across, what detail it would he or she would put across. So one use case we see is that those recorded interview when recruiter speaks with the candidate, how to build a transcript, how to summarize it in an objective way so that hiring manager can possibly, beyond resume, can also consume this information for better decision making along with the recordings, right? So that is one use case we are seeing here. Plus, as a platform, for us, this also creates enriched information and data of candidate, right? Beyond CV. Because probably it's a one-pager CV, but as a recruiter, I'm doing a 30-minute conversation with the candidate and going really deep into what he has done, impact, projects, problem solved. Now, this information is mostly not captured anywhere, right?
Right.
I think we also see this as a very valuable information to kind of helping that candidate or create enriched profile of that candidate. So that is one use case we are seeing. I think we practically haven't yet reached up to that level or that problem where even helping hiring manager record the interview training, uh, you know, kind of reflecting on those interviews post analysis. I think it's a good angle. But I think currently out of our radar, frankly. We are still kind of solving those initial challenges, which are, those a little bit more subjective and difficult. But
Yeah.
like I did last time, right? Based on our conversation, I kind of really like the structured interview part, and now I started thinking that hey, uh, let me start doing it first, and when I see value, how to systemize that for us. And interview recording transcript is something I'll definitely take
Yeah.
up as priority. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, one of the things, like as we're talking, I'm trying to think of what's next in AI, right? Like where are we going to go from here?
Yeah.
And I think that there's a host of opportunities. One of the things, like as you were talking, I was thinking about how how many times have you said to somebody like, "We'll keep your resume on file," right? You had a candidate and they were great, but they didn't quite meet what it was you were looking for. They'd be awesome for another role, right? They'd be amazing in this other role, right? But all you have, right, to match them to that role is just this one piece of paper, right? This, or not a piece of paper anymore; it's a PDF, right? Um, and that's not going to capture like that amazing conversation that you had with them, right? That structured interview. Like now with AI, right? Like with the ability to do these deeper, more contextual searches, right? You can capture these notes. You can contain them, right? And you can start looking for candidates that match future roles that you've already interviewed, that you already got a good feeling about, right? And you can get a lot closer towards getting a good match like on day one because you have this really rich information and you've been able to search through it. So I think that's
Yep.
probably one of the areas where AI is going to start helping,
Yep.
and hopefully in the near future.
Near future. Yeah. I think this won't be a very complex use case to solve. But for that you know either resume validation or that matchmaking logic
Hmm.
has to evolve beyond what it is today. Great. So this is
Yeah,
one area. Anyhow, that's what even I wanted to cover. We are kind of reaching to close to our time. Which are the other
okay.
areas, Edward? You see that, especially in hiring. See, none of us can see what would happen 5 years down the line. The market is shifting every week, right? But how far you can see, what other use cases you see where, especially in hiring, AI can really start adding some value.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I would like to start seeing is having AI handle some more complex documents, right?
Mhm.
So giving AI different inputs. So, like for example, uh, in software engineer hiring, we're often looking at people's GitHub commits,
Mm.
right? Um, but I don't know if you've ever done this personally, but sitting there and sifting through 3 or 4 or 10 GitHub projects and trying to get a sense of like which one of these were like hobby projects they did, which one of these are solving real problems, and like is this really structured the way it needs to be structured? What does it do? It's really hard, right? So using AI to get a better summary out of that, like being able to understand what this thing does, the problem that it solves, whether or not it's well structured, like at a glance, that would be huge.
Mm. Mm.
Um, it was a thought that occurred to me. Like I'm currently building out my own platform, and I started using Cursor,
Okay.
the IDE, and someone said just go to the Cursor chat and say, "What does this code base do?" And I was like, "Okay," and it did it. It explained to me exactly what I had been trying to do, and it took maybe 3 seconds for it to scan the code base and make a decision about what it was I was doing, and it was frighteningly accurate. Um, so I think when you have those sorts of inputs, like AI can give you some really great outputs,
Mm.
because that's like because if you can get AI to solve that part of the problem, right, you can get richer data into AI.
Mm.
So like think of it like this, right? Like um, we keep all our inputs to the process like short and to the point, right? Resumes, cover letters, even like GitHub projects, like the puzzles that we give people to solve sometimes, right? They're short and to the point. They're covering like one small aspect of it. LLMs give us the ability to analyze much more information much more quickly, right?
Mm.
So if we can get larger inputs into that process, we can make better decisions. With a one-page resume, it's really hard for an LLM to make a good decision.
True.
With you know somebody's like all of the blog posts somebody has ever written, like you're going to get a better decision.
True.
Now, what's okay for you to use to analyze somebody for like to make a decision on them hiring, getting hired or not hiring, that's going to be a really interesting question. But like I think that like the real challenge for LLMs now is they don't have enough information to make decisions.
Mm.
And the challenge in the future is how much information is enough, right? Like at what point do you stop and say, no, there's a boundary between my private life and my public life, or like my social media posts are off limit. I don't want you looking at those because I'm a different person when I'm on social media, which is fair enough, right? But I think that's the limitation and the real potential of AI is analyzing a lot of data, analyzing it quickly.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, so it is all about kind of curating, gathering as much information as possible. Either GitHub, we haven't tried, right? So we use GitHub a lot in terms of curation, but I think we haven't yet fit that into our algorithm because we are still working on the basic aspects of it. But yeah, I think it's not very far. The richer the information we provide, inputs we provide, the better outcome it would be, and
Yeah,
which would improve gradually.
right.
Anything else apart from so two areas interesting you mentioned? One is AI match from the existing candidate database if you store information beyond just CV,
Right.
and the second is kind of leveraging available information about the candidate across the internet, and there are many useful informations available, and how to kind of imbibe them to support a decision rather than
Yeah.
making a decision, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, I think that sums it up really well. And I think that there's a host of issues that could arise with either of them. But there's some really great potential there too.
Yep.
Yeah. It's, and I guarantee you as soon as, if I've had the idea, somebody else has had the idea and they're probably already working on it.
Yeah.
Right. So,
True. No, that's the beauty of it, right? That the technology is powerful, and ideally, everyone who understands any problem deeply should work on it, leverage it. It may
yeah,
take some time, but there is a lot of potential and hope. It is still not there. It would evolve. So a little bit consciousness is definitely needed.
yeah,
But I personally see that post cloud or internet, I think this is another revolution which we haven't seen since long, and
yeah,
accessible to many, right? That's the best part of it. Yeah, yeah. Super. Any question you wish I should have covered any point and I haven't in today's conversation, Edward?
like I said last time, there's so many topics. I mean,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
yeah, like I could go on for hours and hours, but I think like this is as good a place as any to stop.
true,
Yeah,
true.
yeah, it's been a fascinating conversation. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I genuinely appreciate the chance to have the conversation with you today.
No, I think it was fun. I think it's a very conversational, right? I think it is all about uh,
Yeah,
probably we both are passionate about hiring, AI, kind of seeing different world through our
mm,
lenses for sure. But I think it was great exchanging those ideas.
yeah, definitely.
Understanding from your perspective, hey, where you see progress, where there are still challenges, and kind of relating with what I'm trying to do in
Yeah,
in my context. Very helpful, Edward. Right?
great, great.
Good. Super, super. So yeah, I think possibly we should connect again after say 6 months or so,
Yeah,
because
sure.
I think things would change. I'm sure that what we are discussing today would be completely different after 6 months in this day and age.